Hello, welcome to Isolation Gigs. It's our regular Thursday podcast. I hope the weather isn't too horrendous where you are. We've got some biblical storms here today. 1 minute it's raining, and 1 minute it's very sunny and warm, and then the next minute it clouds over, gets really dark, and the sky falls in. So luckily we're not outside today. We're kind of inside on our little vodcast kind of thing. And
sounds like vodka.
Vodka, yeah. Maybe a vodka podcast would be good at some point. Not today though, because we're all about health. Today is today's the NHS special, and this is the week leading up to the 72nd birthday of the fantastic NHS. So we thought we would mark that occasion and also mark our connection with the NHS, because we are raising money for the NHS charities together, and get some actual people that work in the NHS onto our podcast so we can ask them some questions and hopefully let people know a little bit more about what they do and what they have been doing during this coronavirus pandemic, which is still ongoing and probably will be for a long time. So it's really nice to have these guests on today, and we're looking forward to chatting to them, because it's a connection, isn't it, that we make. So how are you today, Chloe, with your fairy lights behind you, as usual?
As usual, yeah, I'm all right. Hi everyone. A little bit under the weather today, but I am surviving, and I'm here, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited to have our guests on. We've managed to find a few different people from different areas of the NHS, and will have had different experiences throughout this pandemic and in their lives, So yeah, I'm really excited to chat to them and hear how they've been doing throughout this. And we've been talking about the NHS for ages now, haven't we? And as you said, in promoting the single and in wanting to give support and awareness to what they're doing. And now it's going to be nice to actually have some sort of real life chit chats about it, and sort of delve in a little bit more. I'm excited.
Absolutely. And as usual, if anyone wants us to ask questions of our guests, we have a limited amount of time with each guest today, because we've got quite a few on. But if we see your comment, which we will, we'll put it up on the screen and we'll try and ask them the question. If there's anything you want to know about what's been going on, how it's all been working behind the scenes on the front line as well, in the NHS, just pop it on the thing and we'll try and ask our guests. Equally, if there's any questions you want to ask us about isolation gigs, what's happening in the future, what's happening right now, we'd love to answer your questions. We will briefly touch on what we're probably going to do next week is going to be based around live music venues, because there's a lot of action going on at the moment, trying to put pressure on the government to fund live music in the UK, because it is struggling big time without being able to open up. So we will touch on that maybe later, or well, now probably. And
we can chat about it now. I mean, it's very current for us, isn't it? I mean, I'm guessing you're the same as me in that you go on your social media feeds, and so many people are posting the hashtag Let the Music Play, and sort of sharing when they did their last live gig, and just trying to raise awareness for that, because I think there's definitely been a feeling of, because obviously this weekend so much more is opening up for our side of it, we're almost feeling left behind. And we know with experience that we probably aren't going to be left behind. Like, there will be stuff that comes forward and there will be help, but I don't think it's going to come without a little bit of a push and a little bit of a fight, which is just really tough. I know there's just been so many people voicing those feelings this week, and I can feel it. I think I've been, I think between you and I, we've been staying pretty focused, pretty positive, and pretty busy, really, haven't we? And I think now it's coming closer to the world opening, and we're sort of still like, okay, so how do we spend our days, our weeks, our months until we know, when we can get back to doing what we do. So it's a strange a little bit of a strange feeling right now, but I have
There,
hope, I suppose.
yeah, very little has been moving on that front. Just to update anyone that doesn't really know, legislation at the moment is that no live music can take place in venues or even in gardens. Singing is basically banned because it's dangerous, apparently, which I can kind of see in some ways. Even in weddings, singing is banned. People can only have 30 people at a wedding, and they don't want people singing and getting together, and so it's a real bummer for anyone that makes money out of anything to do with live entertainment, basically. So that is a whole long list of people.
On that, Elliot,
hmm.
I mean, I'm sure you would have seen various people doing socially distanced outdoor gigs over the last sort of few weeks. Were they ever announced as being okay to do from the government's perspective, or were they sort of more, okay, we know we can gather outside with a group, a certain amount of people, now we're going to try and do that? Like, do you know anything about that?
Well, according to the Musicians Union, which I'm a part of, and I obviously read their emails and stuff, as usual with this government, you have to read into the small print to see what they're actually doing, because they don't really make big announcements, and it usually amounts to very little. What the Musicians Union is saying is that from what they can see, only busking is the only kind of form of live performance which isn't outlawed, basically. So they're not
fine. That's the only thing. Right.
Obviously, they're not saying to people go out and busk, because obviously that could again cause its own problems. But they're not saying that you can't do it, basically. Whereas every other kind of entertainment, live performance, they're kind of saying you can't do it. I think practicing is okay, at social distance, but then there's grey areas around that. Where do you practice? Not everyone has a huge space where they practice, so social distancing is not exactly possible all the time.
I think the general feeling, again, for anyone out there that hasn't, obviously isn't necessarily keeping up with the arts side of it, I think the general feeling is, how is it okay for some areas of life to carry on when without social distancing necessarily being completely respected, and then the things that we do that maybe can be socially distanced and still go ahead are not being given the sort of green light. I think that's where it's a bit controversial, and it's a bit hazy, isn't it? And that's what leaves us feeling like, why are you not letting us sing or do anything?
And I think they are going to have to look at it, because as soon as people start getting back on planes, which they are doing now,
exactly,
you couldn't be closer in
like
proximity.
Me and you right now on the screen.
Yeah, we'd be there, wouldn't we? And if someone's ill next to you, you're going to get it. If someone's ill in the queue, we all know the security at airports, you're not going to be able to social distance there. So, like you say, there's a real disparity between what they're allowing, which we can only presume is to boost the economy and save their millions and billions of pounds. Yeah, exactly. But then again, the live entertainment's a huge part of the economy. It brought in 4.5 billion pounds last year alone. So we would hope that once, because people aren't stupid, are they? We can all see that getting on a plane is probably more dangerous than going to a garden party with some bloke singing at the end of the garden or the end of your street. Or even in a restaurant where, I play solo in restaurants, as do you.
Yeah.
I don't need to see anyone in that restaurant up close to me at all to do my job. I could go in, and I very often have got into places and not spoken to anyone, not seen anyone apart from the staff. And I'm, I can't play piano or guitar within 1 meter of someone anyway. So, there's all those grey areas that we are just, and what we're also, just looking for clarity there, but which, we're not very hopeful, because we know that they don't give clarity. And if they do, it's normally for their own benefit.
Yeah, and I think that the feeling is mostly we've probably all been very patient and gone, okay, we understand why we can't do what we what our job for the last few months. Like we've totally understood it and respected that, obviously. But it's just when it's, and no one wants the country suddenly to go from 0 to 100 and you know, to have a huge second wave and you know, go sort of undo all the work we've been doing by socially distancing and isolating and everything. But it's just a bit like, why does that side have to be fine and then pretty much everything in the arts? Because I know there's dance teacher friends of mine that aren't able to get the dance schools back up and running, whereas they could do sort of private lessons, and there's so many things they could do within the guidelines, but they're not being given the okay to do it. And it's just a sort of blanket over the arts that just feels a little bit left behind, not a little bit, very much left behind. And you know, in a nutshell, that's why the this movement has sort of kicked off, and everyone within the industry, I think, is pulling together and trying to get the government's attention, aren't they?
Going back to what you said there, I think people would be very much more at ease to sit and wait because we want to wait until it's safe anyway. You know, it's never going to be 100% safe, but we want to make sure it's as safe. And you know, I'm personally no hurry to go and do gigs until it is safe. But what we do need is some kind of date in the future where we know that possibly stuff could start happening. And I think if we can get to a point where we do get some kind of date or clarity on certain issues, I think that will settle people down a lot. Okay,
absolutely.
You're not going to make money.
Some level of timeline, don't you, to then work backwards from. And again, we understand why that can't be a definite of any sort, but some level of timeline, so you go, okay, so I've got the next few months, how am I going to use them, rather than that kind of, are they going to say in 2 weeks we can crack on, and suddenly you're not kind of ready, or I don't know. It's I mean, we're pretty good at adjusting and being flexible, doing what we do. So that's why, you know, we've survived well up until this point, and we've all found different avenues of getting music out there, getting performance out there. But I think we speak for everyone to say just a little bit more clarity needs to come our way.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully this kind of campaign, you know, it's frustrating that we seem to have to campaign for everything. To get heard, but to be fair to them as well, they did, you know, listen, and they've tried to help some self-employed people. Not everyone. I know a lot of people fell through the net of that, but eventually they did. In my eyes, it wasn't exactly sufficient what they did, but it was probably, you know, what they could do, the minimum they could do, and they did something. So we hope that it'll go beyond that with this, because you know, a world without a lot of these venues is going to be a very dark and depressing place. And it's not just for the music, is it? It's for people's well-being. It's like therapy. And you know, it's something for people to do, because you know, there's very little for people to do recently in the last 3 or 4 months.
I think, you know, if you think about the arts as a whole, and you think about this period, we've been, you know, we really are, to put perspective on it, we're lucky that all we've had to do is pretty much stay in our houses and, you know, stay patient when you compare it to something like the war. But you know, what people have turned to is the live gigs online, Netflix, any music on Spotify, they're discovering new music. There's been loads of like live theatre shows that have been televised. You know, they've done recordings and then they televise them, and people look to that. That's what they look to relax. That's what they look to find hope, to find joy, and take a lot of that away. And I know we're talking about live venues here, but if you do take the bigger side of it away, people would be pretty lost, I think. So
yeah, they would. And we just don't want to see these places go under, even if they can help them out to stay afloat until a point where they can open. I think that's what a lot of them need. Is
support.
Just some support. It's criminally underfunded, as is what we're talking about today, the NHS. The arts is, I speak to musicians in other countries, and the amount of money that gets spent on the arts in some places, like, you know, in Europe and Canada and places like that, you know, they seem to really relish it. It's almost like we take ours for for
Granted.
granted, because we are creators of amazing music, art, theatre. We are the forebearers in many of those areas. It's like, then it's like, well, they're going to keep making that anyway, so just let them do it, whether they're poor or not, or they've got any money or not. But it's not always the case. People can't do it.
No.
If they haven't got any money.
We almost, in a way, we have carried on creating, and we have carried on putting things out there, even in a time when, we've barely had a chance to get any form of earnings. So we are that way inclined, because we do it to feed our soul as well as to share it with others. But as you say, there comes a point when that just won't be possible. People have to, people will have to prioritize their livelihood over their art, and that's what a lot of people have had to do, and therefore probably so many talented artists aren't able to carry on doing it even without a pandemic, because they've gone, I just can't, like, I need to get a roof over my head, I need to support my family. And it's a shame that it has to be that way, because I think it's just it's just blah. That's where that sentence ended.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully next week we will kind of touch on that and maybe get some people from independent venues to come and talk to us. But luckily now we are able to welcome our first guest for our NHS special this week. Just going to bring her in now. Hopefully the technology holds up as we go. And this is Natalie Ellis. She's the head of arts at the Cambridge University Hospital NHS Foundations Trust. And hello, Natalie. Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. How brilliant.
Excellent. Hi. Excellent. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Yeah, I'm doing really well. It's really busy.
Yeah.
I've just come out of a long board meeting, so it's really nice to be here with you now. This is much more fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for making the time. I know you haven't got a lot of it, so.
No, it's a pleasure. How are you all doing?
Pretty good. Yeah, pretty good. Thank you. Yeah, pretty good.
Excited to hear from you and a few others about, what you guys have been up to and how it's all been, because it's a whole different world for us. So.
Yeah. So shall I just tell you how it has been? I guess we reached that 100-day mark yesterday of lockdown, which was kind of crazy, because it's really difficult to remember how things were before this time. It was very different for us, obviously, in hospital, where we're normally very much in our hospital, very much on the wards, in clinics, seeing patients, and it's on the ground work normally. And we have an art collection of over 4,500 pieces of art across all of our buildings, which so we're very much physically in our spaces. So when lockdown happened, and for us it was as quick as I guess everybody else, our hospital had been planning it for longer, but of course nobody knew what would happen. So everybody else had to kind of make quite quick decisions, and so we had to kind of close down a lot of our existing work really quickly, which was really difficult. So we normally have a dance program on our elderly wards for 2 days of the week, and it's called Dance for Health. It's been running for about 6 years, run by an amazing artist in Cambridge called Felipa Pereira Stubbs, who's got decades of experience with working with older people and those with a dementia diagnosis, and anyone really. And it's really about taking, I guess, movement and music, but in a way that brings out the person when you're in hospital. Because, I think anyone who's experienced being a patient in hospital for more than a few hours and maybe landing yourself in a ward, you are suddenly a patient in a particular bay and alongside lots of other people. And so people struggle to kind of remember themselves and to maybe just interact with other people. So when we have a Dance for Health session, the first thing we do is we go around the circle of us all together and we say who we are, where we're from. And it's amazing. From that point, you hear the most incredible stories, life stories, connections are made between patients that have maybe been opposite each other in a hospital bed for 3 weeks and haven't had a chance to say anything to each other.
It's just so emotional.
I know. Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's carry on, please.
Yeah. So it's really, our work is of course it's about recovery and it's about health benefits, but it's much more than, it's very holistic because it's about physical health, but it's very much about emotional health, and it's about social health as well, and just having an opportunity to have a normal conversation and also bring everyone onto a level and enable staff to get to know their patients better. So it's a beautiful job to have. We really miss our patients, and we can't wait to get back onto our wards when it's safe to. So yeah, overnight it changed for us in our arts team. We shelved a lot of work and we got ourselves online, and we just concentrated initially on supporting staff, just because obviously there was a need. And I mean, some staff have been moved on to different wards and, you know, had to take one hat off and put another hat on, and there was a lot of I guess a lot of uncertainty. But there's also a lot of staff that are shielding or that are at home and having to homework, and that's weird as well, because we're an organisation of 11,000 staff, and we're used to busy working environments, and you're used to being able to work quite quickly with a lot of teamwork with people right there. And there wasn't a lot of home working before. So that's a big change. And it isn't just those people that are working on wards and on the front line, as people say, but I mean, it's not great to use military terms. It's not, it feels very strange to talk about fighting a virus. Because I always think with a fight, you've got winners and you've got losers, and actually that's not helpful. Yeah. So it's been amazing, and we're doing stuff on the ground. We're making support packs to go to staff and staff rooms where people can't get out and have a break very easily. And we're also getting resources on towards now for patients, because obviously not having visitors is a strange thing, and we need to support people with the time that they have, and also help staff to occupy their patients. So we're working quite hard on that now. I mean, we've done so much work in that short period of time, and one of the highlights was being contacted by you guys, and it just kind of, I mean, it's strange because Be More Kind is one of my favorite recent Frank Turner songs, and I'm listening to a lot of Frank Turner, like particularly his early stuff. I don't know, I always turn to it when things just get a bit deeper. I don't know. So it was really nice to kind of to have that offer and to do something new. We hadn't done a live stream of music before, and that came right at the time that we really wanted to be able to give our staff something different. You know, we were lots of offers of free food and like nice toiletries and loads of Easter eggs, Lego, which is particularly popular. But it's just, actually, music is a wonderful gift. Arts is a wonderful gift, and it gets a different response because it's much more like to the heart. So so thanks for that, because it's
no worries.
There's real silver linings in this.
I was really happy to come and do it, and it really kind of rounded off and made it such a nice day when we released the song that I could come and do that for you guys, because that's what we're trying to do. We were trying to connect, you know, with the NHS and that was the best way we could do it, I think, given the circumstances. And it is interesting what you say about Frank Turner. During this time, he's been like one of the kind of musicians that's really, I mean, he really talks to his fans, and that's the ethos that I really loved, and I just felt that message would hopefully talk to people. And I don't think I told you this, but I actually had an email from one of your staff at Addenbrooke's, and they sent me some pictures as well, and they said that they were watching the gig on their lunch break, and it really helped like bring them together. And and I've been chatting to them since, and just yeah, it was amazing. And the sense of togetherness that I got from everyone, just for the few messages that I got, was amazing. And it just kind of, it shows that, I mean, I think they said their own words, where we needed to be more kind to everyone during this time, and be more kind kind of just helped kind of with that a bit, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a nice story, and I'm so intrigued as to who that was, but we won't talk about that on the podcast. I mean, that's what we do it for, and we do it for those emails and for those conversations. And I mean, art is such a personal thing that and different things will connect with different people, and I think that is a brilliant example of that happening. Interestingly, together is one of our kind of trust values, we call it. So the NHS Trust has a number of things that we want to be. And the first one is together. And I suppose, well, this time has definitely brought a more profound meaning to that. And it happened naturally. And I think as a nation, we've felt that, kindness just has been felt. I've felt that from neighbours, and we need it. And so I've been seeing that happening just naturally amongst the staff, and that strengthens your team, and it gives people a renewed sense of pride to be working within the NHS. People are doing it because they care about people. It's a people organisation, and I think sometimes that's forgotten. So and everyone is, whether you're clinical or not clinical, you're there to help people. So it was a perfect song, and there aren't actually that many perfect songs. It's quite hard to find a song that kind of really fits the time. So no, good choice.
And thank you for letting us have the opportunity to do it as well, because it was a lot of fun as well to do. And I was like, just learning a little bit about what you guys do from the kind of conversations we had beforehand and stuff, and I was amazed at the program that you've got going on there. It's really really impressive.
Thank you. I think though that this time has given more opportunities for creative work, I mean, and also more ways to communicate with people. So as an example, we launched a poetry project. Must have been around similar time to when we did the recording and the gig with you, and it's a chance really for people to celebrate nurses and midwives. And it's not just celebrating them during the COVID era, but it is about the fact that 2020 is the International Year of the Nurse and the Midwife, and it coincides with Florence Nightingale's bicentenary, which is a huge thing, obviously. And so across the world, people are really kind of shining a light on nurses and midwives. But we had all sorts of things planned for the year, but we weren't able to do a lot of them because we can't be together. So we instead decided to invite people to write about those people, and also just think about the theme of beyond the mask, mask and PPE being the subject that's being picked up so much by the media. But, it's that conversation about what's behind it. And the human side to us all. And it was really pitched at the public, and the public responded. But what was really interesting is that a lot of staff also wrote contributions for that poetry project, and it's brought out a whole level of creativity and expression. It could be songwriting, I think it's about just getting what your feelings are onto paper. And the way that comes across is just always so personal and intimate, and everyone's voice is really different. So in a way, it's given us new opportunities to enable those people to just explore something that they maybe wouldn't have done normally. And people are definitely finding time, if they can, within their day, just to have to do something that they really enjoy, or to listen to something that really picks them up. We've had to do that. So yeah, this time for hospital arts in particular is really interesting. It is for arts and health and well-being generally, but it's definitely not, we're not at the end. It feels like in a lot of respects we're at the beginning, because this period will continue, but also just the effects of this period will very much be there for the nation, and mental health in particular. And we all know as musicians, I guess, that you know, we do it partly because it makes us feel good and it makes us feel ourselves, and we connect with our own identities. And so I think, therefore, the arts have such a powerful contribution to make when we are, as a nation, healing from this, and we move into more of a recovery period.
Yeah.
So it's quite full on. I don't know. I think we're all kind of tired in different ways. I was saying earlier, I feel tired from all the creative thinking and like the problem solving and just learning new things.
Yeah, and having to just be, you know, having to sort of change the way you're thinking quite quickly, or, you know, in a different way. You're obviously used to having to do a lot at the same time, or, you know, multitask, but it's changing your perspective on things very rapidly, isn't it? That can be quite draining, and you have to sort of take stock of it and go, okay, right, let's just let that settle in and then move. But when you're in a position where you're constantly doing that, it must be difficult to manage day to day.
Yeah, and I think we were all running on adrenaline for the first few months, whoever we were. You know, everything was changing, you know, almost by the hour. So you just go into this survival mode, and it's kind of, this is almost exciting. This is like a proper challenge.
Yeah.
In a really weird way, because obviously you're dealing with a lot of heavy stuff, and it's terrible. But that energy doesn't last forever, and it moves more into a different place. But I feel really privileged, actually, to be working at Cambridge University Hospitals, and we have so much support from our hospital charity, who have done so well to fundraise, and the public for giving, because that will mean that we can like move forward to do what needs to be done to support those that are here as patients or families, and also our staff. And it's kind of, you know, there's just so many examples of amazing work and amazing thought, and those that have just gone out of their way to make sure that, you know, iPad and technology is working in wards, or just those sometimes it's those small gestures that make a massive difference. And of course, it's a place where, you know, life is still beginning. We're still having babies being born. There's still joy. That's still there. So it's there's much to remember, I guess, about all this. And and I'll tell you something. We've been donated a new piano.
Oh.
I got an email yesterday, and I mean, a brand new piano from a really great shop that I won't mention, but that has donated to Patworth, who are next door to us. And I've been jealous for the last few months, because it's amazing to walk into a hospital and hear music. And so I'm so excited about that, and trying to make that work for us. So hopefully we'll be able to invite you in to play it at some point soon.
I was going to say, Elliot, that's your cue.
I'd absolutely love to. Yeah, like whenever I hear about a piano going into a different space, it makes me excited. Like, because, you know, that's what I kind of do. I take piano music into interesting places, and that would certainly be interesting.
Yeah. So there are things to look forward to, and lots to move forward with, and really interesting collaborations starting up, new ways of kind of making art happen in hospitals. So there's a lot of things to move forward with. It's extremely busy. which I'm lucky about. But I am also really mindful of what's happening, I guess, within the art sector and the cultural sector, and desperately worried about it.
We were just touching on that before. So we're going to do a session about that next week, to do with venues and the arts and things, and we're constantly talking about it, and hopefully there'll be some action on it soon. But...
I'm going to say hopefully by next week when we're talking about it, there's a little bit more to grab onto, rather than where we're currently. So but, I mean, it's not a long time, but
I'm going to bring in our next guest now, and but I just wanted to say thank you so much, Natalie, for coming on. It's completely up to you. If you want to stay and be part of the chat, you can. If you've got to go, that's fine. It's
I'm happy to hang around. This is fun.
Yeah,
great.
Brilliant. So I'm going to bring in Holly next, and then we've got Will a little bit later. So apologies to Will. You might just have to wait a second while we just kind of like chat to everyone because we're a little bit behind. But I'm going to bring in Holly Smart now, who's actually a nurse at the Hall Hospital in Dorset, I believe. Yeah. Yes. So hello, Holly. Can you hear us?
Holly!
Hi! Oh my God, you look good.
You look great too. Sorry, me and Holly, I'll take over a second here. Holly and I trained at Performers College together, didn't we?
We did.
Years ago.
Oh my God, 1,000 years ago.
And now you've transitioned into being a staff nurse. That's just incredible to me. So it's amazing to have you here.
Some days you don't know what you've done.
How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's settled down a lot, and we've got really, really busy again, like in a whole different way. So yeah, really busy.
So just tell us a little bit more about your role, and obviously we said you're at Poole Hospital, but just tell us a little bit more so everyone has an idea.
Okay, cool. So I'm a staff nurse on a respiratory ward. So we do normally we do respiratory and we do endocrine, so like diabetes, etc. But obviously back in March when everything went a little bit wrong, we switched to full respiratory because obviously we knew it was coming. You know, we'd heard about it, we could see it on the news, we could kind of see it approaching, and we were like, yeah, okay, this is gonna be us, definitely. So because we do non-invasive ventilation on the ward as well, like the BiPAP and the CPAP, which we've had like a real rejig of the ward. So we were a COVID ward, but we took the BiPAP off the ward originally. Well, we were trying to, but because within Dorset we had a lot of cases, but not as many as like London or some places up north. And we were very, very lucky we escaped that. Like our ITU switched into like a green ITU and a purple ITU. So they were very separate as well. And I know A&E were very, very quiet, which is like obviously a word we don't use in hospitals very often. You don't say it out loud because it will hear you. So we kind of transitioned to that, and we had a lot of new staff as well because we had a lot of obviously day services shut down, like a lot of endoscopy, a lot of I think our acute cardiac unit became the green ICU, things like that. So we had a lot of those people, and some of whom were newly qualified at the time, like 2 weeks in to their new job, so we had really different staff. We had a lot of, band sixes that we wouldn't normally have on the ward, who hadn't been on a ward for a really long time. We had newly qualified. We had absolutely loads of people, and we were very nervous, obviously, about the teams combining like that because we've never done that before. And obviously they were really nervous because they haven't been on a ward for 1,000 years, or some of them are, like I said, just beginning, and they hadn't chosen a ward like that for their first job, but here they were. But we were so lucky. Like, I'm very lucky I work within a ridiculously good team. Like, I couldn't ask for a better team to have done the whole COVID season with. But our new people as well, like, we got really, really lucky with them. They were lovely. So we did have the BiPAP back on the ward, the CPAP, the other type of ventilation. I think probably people have read about later. They were doing that in ITU after a while because that was another supposedly proven way to sort out COVID as opposed to, real full ventilation. So, we've learned so many things along the way. So many things.
Wow. You're blowing my mind.
Oh, you know me, Chloe. I like to talk.
You do, and it's amazing. It's amazing to hear, Ho. It's just like, just to hear that's what, that's been your experience the last few months is
It's just I think the idea, like the hospital obviously effectively shut its doors. Really, I mean, we obviously were trying desperately to get through that, and I think even the government were at one stage, for whatever faults they have, you know, please come to A&E if you still need us, you know, chest pain, unconscious, or, you know, blood coming from anywhere you don't know where it's coming from, things like that. But, you know, we had a week, well, we had a little while, we didn't see a stroke for 3 weeks, and we were like, they're there, they must be there. So people weren't using the stuff, but the people who really needed it, we were very worried weren't coming in. And we knew they were essentially probably backing up somewhere. And it was just a really unusual way. Like, I think we spoke about, like, you know, no visitors in the hospital is a really strange concept. They're normally everywhere. And it's been really odd. And our PPE has changed constantly. I think at one stage we couldn't print out any action cards for weeks because it changed hour to hour, the protocol. So we didn't really know, you know, we were just learning and learning and learning, which has been amazing. You know, it's been absolutely incredible. And I think a lot of us were getting very burned out as well, because we didn't even have winter pressures last year. We had summer pressures, winter pressures. It never stopped. You know what I mean? And, you know, it never stopped. And suddenly COVID came along, and it's absolutely horrendous. And it's been awful, but it has stopped everything. It stopped people coming in who didn't need to be in hospital. It stopped, you know, it's just stopped everything, and it's created learning, and it's created so many things that we didn't expect, you know. And obviously we've lost a lot of people along the way, and we've had to protect a lot of people along the way, but it has been an incredible learning opportunity, to be quite honest, you know, as nurses. And like, I think, like you said before, it's the year of the nurse and midwife, but this was not what we had in mind, to be quite honest.
No, and I think what you just said about the lack of visitors being really strange, but actually what that also means is that the nursing staff and everyone on the wards has to fill that position. You know, it's bringing forward all of that care that you're needing to and wanting to do, and shining a light on the human side of nursing that often doesn't get spoken about, and that's really important. That's an important part of the skill set of nurses and midwives, and also not having visitors in the hospital. You know, that's missed by staff as well. It's not just missed by patients. Like, staff really miss having the distraction, the conversation, the benefits of having visitors is felt by
people who know your patients, people who know them best. And we did have a system set up at one stage, I think we have still got it, to be honest, which somebody would be allocated, a couple of people would be allocated to ring each person's next of kin every day for updates. And whether they got to us first is another story, you know, because people do like to ring very early when the doctors haven't seen anybody. You know, so we were kind of encouraging people to ring a little bit later on in the day, so we had some actual information to give them. So we've made sure we've tried to stay in contact as much as possible with people. And I think I put it on my Twitter at some stage, you know, like, obviously people were very, very stressed and upset about people being on their own in hospital, you know, and at the end, if they were really unwell and things, but I promise you, they were not on their own. You know, that's what we do, that's what we're there for. And you know, we never leave somebody on their own when it's their last hours or last minutes. You know, you can have a really busy floor, but if somebody looks like they're just about to go, you know, you will always put somebody in with them, or, you know, in those last few hours or whatever, just so they're not by themselves. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, you know, the headlines love to tell you, oh, they died by themselves. They didn't. I promise you they didn't. You know, that's what we do. We love them for you.
That's your core. That's, you know, you literally are there giving your hearts.
It's a hugely important message, which I'm really glad that you've brought up, because I do feel like the headlines are very easy to read and probably misconstrue a lot of the stuff that goes on in hospitals, and it's really great to hear that.
No, it's hard, because obviously people, they want to be there with their loved ones, and we would prefer they were there with their loved ones. But, you know, it's in this unprecedented situation where we have no other option but to, you know, be there. All we can do is promise that we are their family while their family are not there. That's what a nurse does, you know, that's kind of what we're here for. But, don't play, it makes me emotional. Stop looking at me.
You're making me emotional.
It makes me emotional.
I'm already so proud of you, and then I'm hearing all this, and to be honest, like this, I knew it would be a big subject for us to listen to, and it's really needed. Like we need to hear these, you know, these sort of stories and this actual reality of what's been going on, because what you guys are doing is just amazing to us, and we're so thankful for it, and I know everybody is. And I think just kind of like hearing how much of your hearts are in what you do is something we can all relate to, being artists, and it's just just I can't speak anymore. It just keeps getting me, because
we didn't obviously have the real, you know, this horrendous stress that the ITU nurses have had. They have had it the worst of any of us, for sure. But you know, being on one of the active COVID wards, you know, it's strange because it's been quieter. You know, you've had real time to do your job. You've had time to give people so much attention, but they are a very different group of people to look after because they deteriorate so fast. You know, and I can't, you know, completely independent people sat there, you know, and you have to have that you know, not us, obviously the doctors have to have that conversation of, look, we really need to stick a tube down you because your oxygen is rubbish, you know. Completely independent people that are having these conversations, and the poor doctors as well. Like we just, you know, they are the ones having to make those decisions as well, you know, the real top level doctors in ITU to the ones that are on the ward. You know, everybody has had to kind of step up and make these decisions they didn't know they were going to have to make. And, you know, as nurses, we can just support them as best we can, and obviously, you know, work together. Yeah. And, you know, but this is where I think dancers would make you know, this is my plan to repopulate the nursing profession, singers, because this is what we're made for. This is what we're made for.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes complete sense. Like, absolutely. There's definitely, I'm sure, a part in all of us that would be able to give a lot in that situation. But I say this, and I still think what you guys are doing is something. I think it's, you know, it does take also another side of a personality to be able to stand in your strengths and be what other people need from you in a really difficult time. And yeah, you guys are doing it, and that's just incredible.
We try. It's like the theatre, really, in the fact that I think as dancers and singers, we are built to, you know, as a professional dancer, as a professional singer, we were built to change on a dime, to learn, to say, to even on the stage, that person's fallen over, there's a space, what are you going to do with it? You know, stupid things like that, you know, the things we learn to do. And actually within nursing, that has served me incredibly well already. And obviously, you know, it's not so much a black profession. I can't just go on stage and go, oh, I've got this, it's okay. You know, you have, it's really lovely in nursing to be able to admit you don't know something, which is what I found from the performing profession. Obviously it's very like, no, I've got this, and then you really haven't got this.
5, 6, 7, 8.
And when you do bring arts of some sort into the equation for patients, that change in mood and that kind of engagement has such an amazingly positive ripple effect. It will mean that they're more alert. It might mean that they're more cooperative with taking their medicine. It will mean so many things, and it's really difficult to prove, unfortunately. But there is undoubtedly a significant impact on what we're all trying to do, which is to get patients better and to get them home.
And I think the arts are so important within that. And I think this whole, at the moment, opening pubs and not even looking at the theatres at the moment is stressing me. I'm seeing people in the supermarkets with gloves on. I want them off. I'm seeing the masks and I'm seeing everything. I've seen all these things, and this, you know, maybe we'll go to 1 metre because the pubs are going to open. If you're going to 1 metre, I want to go back to the theatre. I need my friends to stop struggling and worrying, you know, because I've been lucky enough, if that's the word, to have my job this whole time, but it could have been me easily. You know, definitely. And for you guys to be doing like a charity single, you know, to help the NHS when you guys have had your livelihood taken away from you at the moment, that's incredible. We're very, very grateful.
We honestly just felt we didn't, you know, we wanted to give something to you guys because we just feel like, okay, we're sitting at home, you know, doing some live gigs from our sofa or whatever, but it's nothing compared to, I feel like, what you have had to endure, and as you say, keep being you know, on the ball to change and to learn, and it's just so much. There's so much pressure in these last few months for you guys just to be what the nation has needed you to be. So
there is, I guess, and like I think like you said before, like this whole frontline thing, you know, this militarization of the NHS. You know, the NHS, it is run as a business, and sometimes that isn't always right. You know, it sometimes does need to go back to, you know, your matrons or your clinical leads or whatever, because they are the ones who know what they're doing. But at the same time, you know, we are not the military. We are still, you know, doctors, nurses, midwives, you know, support staff, physios, all these people. And we go in and we do our job. And yes, our job has changed massively, you know, but at the core of it, you still remember what you do. And like, you know, even like when when we had our non-invasive ventilation back on the ward, and you're like, I know this, it's like I might be behind a visor and all kinds of things, but this is what we do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and when you start seeing our regulars creeping back in, because obviously it's respiratory, we get a lot of regulars.
Yeah.
And luckily for us, a lot of them were really topped up on their visit before March happened. You know, they were the ones that we discharged just before this happened, thank goodness, because, you know, they haven't had to come in for a while. And they would have been so vulnerable. Like we were terrified of some of them coming back in, because we were like, we don't know if they would get through that. But, you know, luckily for us, a lot of them didn't, you know, and we're just seeing the tail end of things now, really, and hoping, don't know what's going to happen next, to be honest.
Yeah. So just so we don't leave him waiting forever in
the green room.
In the backstage. Unfortunately, as we've said before on here, that the green room isn't very glamorous. It's literally just a screen where you kind of wait. So I'm going to bring in Will Collett, who's a junior doctor at Warwick Hospital, I believe. And so we wanted to get like a kind of an all-round view, you know, a snapshot of what's been going on, and to get a doctor as well, which is great. So hello, Will. Hopefully we can get you in on here.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, we're pretty good. And it's been lovely to have a chat with everyone in different kind of areas of the NHS. So just tell us a little bit about your role.
So as you said, I'm a junior doctor. I am currently working in medicine, in old age medicine and stroke services at Warwick. And I also do A&E shifts as well. So I do extra shifts at one of the other hospitals. At the start of all of this, it was sort of business as usual, kind of working in the hospital. The wave that we'd braced ourselves for didn't hit on day one, but the intensity from the staff was there already. So lots of services had changed, lots of processes have been streamlined, ready to receive patients with COVID-19. The A&E that I work at, you know, we're building physical walls to divide and have a better flow of patients. And then it just sort of relatively slowly started dripping in, because obviously we knew it was in London before it came to us, sort of near Birmingham. So it was very much sort of drip feeding patients into the hospital. And there was at the very beginning a bit of a novelty about it. You know, we're used to wearing PPE for some conditions, but not wearing it for an entire shift with seeing everyone. There was that kind of, it's a new condition that's coming in, so we've not encountered it before, but we've encountered things like it, and we're still learning. And it was, everyone was sort of geared up and ready for it. And then before we knew it, we turned around and the hospitals were fairly full of this virus, and we didn't quite realise what had been happening behind us. So we'd been getting all the patients in, filling up, and it was never a wave that hit the front door. It was just all of a sudden we were pretty full. And the medical wards, my ward very quickly turned into a COVID ward. Initially it was one ward in the hospital. It was the ward with the most side rooms. That was our COVID ward. You know, a week in, all of a sudden we had a second COVID ward, and then as the weeks progressed, it just ramped up until non-coronavirus patients were in the very much the minority.
Wow. It's really interesting to hear how that kind of came in like that, because all we hear is a wave and people getting things ready and stuff like that. But
I think it's certainly hit London more like a wave, because we, as a healthcare, we knew something was coming. We'd seen what was happening in Italy, and at the time people were thinking about 3 weeks behind Italy. So things happened, I think maybe a little bit too slowly at the start, but soon things really picked up. I think London bore the brunt of it, and then we all saw that other hospitals sort of saw what was happening and could change and learn quite quickly. I think that's one of the, just picking up on one of the other points that I heard a little bit ago, one of the things that we've been learning a lot of during all of this is actually collaborating with other hospitals. You'd be surprised. You'd think the NHS is one joined up entity, and whatever is best practice is practice across the entire country. But you'd be surprised that it's actually very local, very disjointed. And if someone has found a really good way of doing something in one hospital, it doesn't necessarily translate to other places. But with coronavirus, that barrier was broken down. Hospitals were sharing information very freely. Specialists were all talking to each other. I think there was a Zoom call quite early on with about 100 ITU consultants in and around London, just sharing experiences and trying to see what worked for them in one hospital, and they could spread it. So that's been something that's been really positive, that's come out of this as well.
So you've been sharing lots of PPE as well. I mean, that's quite a good example, is where hospitals didn't have the necessary equipment. It's not that you get to hold on to what you've got. It's like, where is the need and how are we going to get that? And that quite literally meant taking some staff in an ambulance or a vehicle and getting it there and going where the need is, which is different to how the NHS normally works. So yeah, it's really nice to highlight that.
Yeah, they're usually very separate, and actually this time the research nurses have been collaborating, all the things have been coming together, and actually that is such a good thing that I really hope we learn from now going forward.
Yeah.
And as obviously I'm not a medical person, but as a developing kind of illness, and like I think I've heard everyone mention that the learning curve, it must have been extremely steep, as it was a kind of an unknown kind of quantity, I guess. If it was to roar back in the winter or whatever, it sounds like there's been a lot more research and a lot more learning gone on. So it would be more of a known thing, would it now?
Yeah, I think we've certainly learned a lot. What we didn't realise at the start, or rather at the start, we thought this was just a chest problem, a breathing problem, just like the flu. And we were using all our past experience to think, how would we manage a really bad flu? What we've learned is actually this is a multi-organ issue. And one of the biggest problems is actually people developing blood clots.
Yeah.
We didn't realise that at the start. And that can affect the lungs, it can affect other organs, it can stop blood supply getting to them and make people very unwell and make those organs fail. So we were, sort of catching our tails at the start in terms of we didn't understand why people were getting so sick in different ways. So now we've kind of been more alert to that. And just like in this country, we have really focused on this virus. The hospitals have changed their working. We'd cancelled outpatient appointments. We'd cancelled routine surgeries. We had focused and dedicated ourselves to treating this one thing. So the research community has also focused in on that, developing vaccines very quickly, getting them to human trials, again, sharing information, collaborating. It's not just the private companies trying to develop a vaccine first to make the money when they sell it. It has been a lot more of a community effort, and it's I've kind of just forgotten my train of thought there, really. But we have learned, and we've kind of we will start at a better point, and we've been quite quick with it.
I think that's sorry, carry on.
Sorry, I was just going to say that the thing that everyone is aware of is that most hospitals have had to really reduce their normal activity. I mean, at Cambridge, we closed down outpatients quite early, and stopped all surgery and etc., etc., etc. So the hospital was so quiet, completely dead, very strange. But of course, there's a backlog. There's a big backlog.
Yeah.
My problem is that people are starting to be surprised about that backlog, though. I don't know why people are surprised about that backlog, because I think, unfortunately, because within a pandemic, we've never done this before. And obviously, I've heard a few criticisms in the last couple of days of people saying we made mistakes at the start, as in not we, just the global we, there were mistakes made. We didn't catch this fast enough. We didn't do this. But I honestly don't know how we could have done things any differently. Maybe we could have shut down a week earlier, 2 weeks earlier, maybe. But the learning we've done from it has come from doing. And a lot of people are saying, well, we should have known this, we should have done this. There was no way we could have possibly done those things. And I think everyone involved has been learning, like we said the whole time. And, it's very easy to criticize and say, shoulda, woulda, coulda, we could have done all these things. But hindsight is 2020. And we didn't have the benefit of that. This is not just a really bad flu, it's something else. And I think a lot of that's happened. And now the backlog that's coming from it, we're going to have that. We were always going to have that. And people being surprised and stressed right now, fueled by the media, of course, it's going to happen, and we don't want it to happen, but it's going to, because that is the nature of the beast at the moment. Everybody has kind of had to take one for the team, unfortunately. And as horrible as it sounds, it's just, unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And we are desperately trying to get on top of things, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah, and people have known, our hospital leaders have been thinking like 5 steps ahead and remodeling scenarios the whole time. So as soon as they close down these services, they're remodeling how they're going to bring them back. And, they're like a bit hospital, like a big logistical puzzle, red areas, green areas, amber areas. Everyone is having to get used to decanting wards and popping up new ICU spaces in a question of a few days, things that nobody ever thought was possible. So I think that flexibility of operations in hospitals, so much has been learned, certainly in our hospitals, so much has been learned through that period, that we're moving into this, what we're planning to be like an 18-month phase, where we're essentially ready to move back in to crisis mode at any point. But that is informed by everything that's just gone.
Yeah.
And really, what else can you do? As you say, I mean, I really don't think hospitals should feel that they made wrong decisions in that respect, because as there was no way of knowing what I guess we've now learned, both medically and in many other respects.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask as well about the Nightingale hospitals, because to me that seemed like an amazing thing that they were doing, like very, very quickly. Like in the Excel Centre in London, I know there was one. Did you have some up in Birmingham as well? I think there was one.
Yeah, so it was going to be at the NEC.
Yeah,
and interestingly, I am also in the Army Reserves.
Oh, right.
So I'm a doctor within the reserves, and my field hospital's based in Birmingham, and they were quite instrumental in developing the plans and the systems for the Nightingale Birmingham. So I could have moved across to there had things really escalated, but luckily it never opened. But yeah, it was, you watch the news in February, March, and China build a hospital, 1,000-bedded hospital in a few days, and the world think it's insane that could happen. So it was kind of quite proud to see how quickly we could put up a very, very large, very capable hospital in London. Luckily, it wasn't needed to the to the extent that we had feared it might be. But I thought as a nation, it really showed what we can, when we have a priority, what we can deliver. It was good to see.
I think a lot of people, you know, for whatever faults the government has had, we did protect the NHS, and it has worked, you know, and we are ready, like you say, to spring back into action if we need to. We don't want to, but we will if we have to. But like you said, these NHS Nightingale hospitals going up were this symbol of just, look what we can do when we have to. And yeah, like you said, it does make you feel proud, and it made us feel proud to be NHS, to be quite honest.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely.
I was just going to ask, with all that in mind, everything, so all the insight you've all given, and obviously, like you said, Holly, you know, there's a lot of backlog. There's a lot still, obviously, to deal with that wasn't able to be dealt with during the urgent time. Where would you guys say you're at now? I mean, obviously, it's still very apparent that COVID's around, but are you sort of just trying to get back, like bring other things back into the mix, or is it? Where would you all say, or maybe you've all got a different opinion on that?
I think up here, we're very much trying to get back to normal, opening up outpatients, getting some routine surgery done again, as the number of cases has really dropped away. But as a staff, we're all gearing up for round 2, as it were. We feel it's going to come. We have been working very intensely for weeks, and I think at some point we kind of need to take a breath, take a break, because before we know it, in a few months' time, we're going to have winter, which is busy anyway. And we think that the virus isn't going to be gone by the end of the year. So we're going to probably see a spike of cases then. And that there is a concern. Yeah, there's a real concern for the winter months, just how things are going to be. But we are, as Holly said, I wouldn't say the Q word, but it has been at the front door a lot fewer people coming in because they've been deliberately staying away. So we've been not as rushed off our feet as we have been in winter. Perversely, we thought we would be, but actually it's been more manageable.
It's definitely something we needed as well.
It's starting to pick up again, though. It's starting to come in.
Definitely. And I think, I mean, the ward I work on now, I'm rotating at the moment, but the ward I'm normally on is, I think we're the only COVID ward left at Poole. And it's lots of admissions. It's lots of things straight from A&E, which we, have had to learn how to deal with, and, things like that. Whereas they would normally go to an ambulatory ward first and then come to us, it's kind of bypassing straight away. So, it's taking skills that we've had, as student nurses, for example, when you're in A&E as a student, things like that, the things you've learned there, you put in. And I think, what A&E looks like. It's just a cycle of, in ECG, boom, boom, like all the kind of, it just goes one after the other. And as a COVID ward, you get that now. But like I said, at Poole, we're down to, I think, 1 or 2 at the moment. But again, like you say, with an 18-month plan of who knows what's coming.
Yeah, and as things start to open up again, obviously, as the public, to me it looks worrying as people start to kind of go out there and go to pubs and bars and things. Is that a worry, do you think, in general, or?
I just wish they'd open the theatre if they're going to open the cinema and the pubs. To be honest, I've said this
exactly.
I just think, I know it sounds really silly. Like somebody was talking earlier really loudly on a phone right next to me when I was outside, and for me, it was a case of it was no less, direct at me than somebody singing at me, and I don't know what they're thinking, and I don't know why they won't fund the backlog. Look at Cirque du Soleil's going under. Look at, all these big things like theatres that say they're not opening again. Panto season I was reading about yesterday, Panto season is a massive thing within the theatre. It funds them for the whole year. A Christmas without Panto is just a little bit sad.
And there's a massive irony. There's a massive irony that people have been spending, those who have been furloughed have been spending a lot of lockdown taking in what we call culture through Netflix and Amazon Prime and
and
where
would they be without it?
from? I mean, we thought this was hard. We thought in the art sector we were having a hard time before, and just to come from, you know, the types of conversations that are being had, and I'm just seeing now announcements that we never wanted to hear from theatres who are having to, you know, essentially do mass layoffs now because what else can they do? So I'm just hoping the Arts Council are going to come out with something big. And
it worries me that they've been defunding the whole time up until this point, though, and that defund has happened, and there doesn't seem to be any. I know there's like a load of about 1,000 you know, celebrities have signed a letter to the culture secretary today, you know, trying to reopen live venues and things like Ed Sheeran, etc. But actually, you know, they are the ones who probably will survive, whereas your small companies, your amateur dramatics, your pantos, your Broadway shows, you know, all these things that are so huge. Like, Europe is managing to do it, and I don't know why we aren't looking at what they're doing. And I know a lot of theatres are saying, unless we're full to the brim, we can't open. But can we find a way somehow? Like, I remember dancing in Buxton, and their theatre's about this big, but you know, it must be doable somehow, because you cannot leave an entire industry out on their ear wondering what's happening, because, you know, yes, other things are important, but this is just as important. We need the arts, like, really need it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, we would be, I feel like we've veered off of the NHS now. I
Sorry.
do want to go back, but no, we would be super respectful at, you know, in terms of how to go forward and socially distance and do whatever we need to do to be as healthy as possible. And it is just a bit baffling right in this moment. The situation we're in is a little bit like, how can you open the pubs and everything at the weekend and not even have a conversation properly about the theatres and the venues for music and stuff. So
this is health related, because mental health is already something that's massively underfunded as a country, and this is the next wave.
We're already seeing it. We've already seen more than I've seen for a long time, and you know it. We knew it was coming, but here it is, and it was quick. It came fast.
And all sorts of other horrible things that happen, you know, to society when everyone's feeling pressure. I think that's the thing. This is the serious fallout from a pandemic, and they are so connected. It's ridiculous to think of all these things as separate parts of our lives.
And like you say, they are joined up, but there doesn't seem to be enough joined up thinking going on in the right places to kind of try and make that happen. But hopefully, like we were saying beforehand, hopefully eventually it will start. Something will happen. It seems like we have to put pressure on them for everything now, which is annoying. But if we have to do it, we have to do it. And I guess that is the next thing, isn't it? The next thing is what comes after this. Obviously, it's still here. It's not going anywhere. But the wave of other issues, and like Natalie said, that music and arts and theatre and dancing and things is therapy, and people need it.
They do. They really do. It's horrid to think about, but it's you know, it's something that desperately needs addressing. And I just think there has been so much focus, and yes, on the NHS and things like that, and we've needed it really badly this time. But I think now it is time to, you know, think outside as well, because it's really necessary to think outside now, back into the arts and back into what we can do for people's mental health, because it's really suffering.
But the arts industry and the health sector are both very resilient, and I think we're not just
for us, they think we're resilient forever.
That's almost
I also know, but I'm trying to be positive. But we have to come out, and it's about putting the right argument across. I think I genuinely think people don't necessarily make the connection between what they watch on TV every evening and theatre on live art on stage and film and stage schools and music hubs And, you know, all of this is part of the same ecology, and we all lap it up. And as a nation, we have, you know, arguably the best industry, and it brings in serious amounts of money. And that's not the only argument, but it's a bloody strong one.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
if a lot of it's boiling down to money, you know, which often it is, it has to be part of the argument, doesn't it? To actually prove how much it does bring in, and to be
It generates more than the Premier League generates for our,
exactly.
It's one of the only sectors we're actually still world leaders in, you know, like we are creators, and you know, you'd think that we'd want to continue that.
I think my problem as well, like from the very beginning of it, even back in March, like we had a lot of trouble, and I think it's a lot of the anxiety for us as well. I don't know if we all felt the same way, but when going into the hospital and seeing the news, the realities of the two things together were very, very different. And we were being fed something on TV that was this, I don't want to say glorified because it has been hideous, but it was a very, you know, glorified version of what was happening. And then the reality of what was happening within the hospital and in the community and everywhere else was very different. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to have to be very careful with, like you said, that disconnect between what you're watching on Netflix and what you're watching, you know, in your normal life. And, you know, thinking the pub is the be all and end all and things like that. Don't get me wrong, we all love the pub. But, you know, also, we all love the pub. We love it. You know, after
we're British.
We're British. And also after the rehearsals, my whole life, the pub. But, you know, you'll know this. But, you know, I think we're going to have to be very careful with how the public perceive the importance of everything, like you say, because the divisions between the two have been there from the beginning. And we're going to have to be really careful how we put the two together.
So. Will, would you like to say anything on that kind of contrast between the media kind of and the outside world and inside the actual NHS where you're working? Is that something you noticed as well?
There's certainly an element of that. The daily briefings, you could tell there was an element of political spin. You know, saying, "Oh, we've got plenty of PPE, no problems," but actually, you can see the stocks dwindling on your ward. You know, there was that kind of disconnect. But it was also, it was very odd working in the hospitals that I was working in, that my experience was different to my friends in London. It was different to my friends in Newport that had a horrendous surge of cases. So everyone had different experiences everywhere. And you couldn't portray all of those in the news, I guess. Yeah. But there was a political, you know, filter on what the briefings were saying, which angered quite a lot of people. And I just ended up turning off the news. It was everything that I'd read in the build-up to the cases coming into the hospital, you know, picking it up in when it was in March, and then all of a sudden Italy, and you're just, you know, absorbing all of the information. It was on 24/7 in the news, and it was just too much. And when you were in it, you just wanted to not then read about it. So I've kind of switched off a bit from those briefings and the daily updates.
I don't think I've watched one since May.
Yeah, I think they might have stopped them now, actually. But they basically became quite irrelevant after a couple of months, from what I could see, because they were just putting the same graphs up there, which no one really understood, and saying the same old stuff. But you know, obviously, it's been really good to shine a light on actually like what people don't see and what people don't hear, and that's kind of what we've tried to do today, I think. And I'm just conscious that we are hitting our mark where I normally
we're way over, actually.
I normally click off around about an hour and a quarter. So I guess what I wanted to say is just a massive thank you for you all for coming on and slotting us into your very, very busy schedules, because obviously as musicians, artists and whatever, we're trying to link the two things together, and we're trying to help in whatever way we can. And I guess we don't really have an overall question. We sometimes have an overall question this week, but I normally just kind of get people to go around and say something positive for the future. We don't really have a frame for that this week because we're just kind of having a really interesting general discussion. But Chloe, do you want to start us off and then we can kind of go around?
Oh, me. Okay. Wow, I feel very on the spot now. Thank you.
Sorry.
I guess with the conversation we've had today and the light that we have shone on all, your areas of the NHS and everything you've been doing, I guess for me, it's just reignited any even more sense of humanity and sense of togetherness and sense of love that we all have for each other and for the country and for, the way we want to see it and the Britain that we want to live in and I guess also the world. But hearing you guys and all your different stories makes it sound really, all your different experiences of what you've been going through has really hit me hard. And it's just made me remember how important just keeping the community together and keeping talking and keeping supporting each other. So I guess it's not the biggest message, it's just more of a reminder of that, and to all keep remembering that going forward, basically.
Great. Thank you. Natalie?
No, I completely I completely agree with you, Chloe. And actually, if you remember before COVID, it was Brexit, and we felt so divided, and it was so miserable for so long. And so it has felt really quite amazing to be part of something that has brought out the kindness and actually for arts in my context to be something that people are taking more notice of and that is being recognised as having real worth and real value and real importance. So I am pleased about that. That's a real silver lining, and we shall carry on doing what we're doing and hopefully do much more of it across not just hospitals but healthcare in general. There are a lot of care homes, social care sector, everything, GPs. So I think I feel positive in that sense for sure.
Great.
Good.
And Holly?
Oh God.
Sorry, put you all on the spot.
Yeah. No, I think like Natalie said, it's we have had this experience of kindness, of people actually realizing what we do and what happens, and a lot of people people are saying, oh, heroes, etc. We're not anything of the sort. We are doing our job, and unfortunately our job looks like this at the moment. And we don't want people to pedestal anybody, because it is a full healthcare sector effort. Like you're saying, it's everything that's involved in it, the supporter, even down to our cleaners on our ward. They are incredible. Silly things that people don't remember but are there. And we are seeing, the attitudes are starting to go back slightly. And I just want people to remember that, the human beings are still doing what they need to do. If we can continue to treat each other like humans, that would be great. I think there's some documents being published by a lot of the university hospital trusts and things in London, and there's some incredible things about going forward and being kinder to people and learning from things. I just want everyone to learn from everything, because we can be better after this and not just go back to what we were.
Yeah,
Love it.
definitely.
Definitely. And finally from Will as well.
Just leading on from Holly's comments, really. Over the past, I've been involved in healthcare for over a decade, and in that time we've seen nursing bursaries cut. We've seen the junior doctors' contracts and the pay cuts and the changes to hours. We've seen the pension changes to allied health professionals, so the physiotherapists, the occupational therapists, and the pressures of winter and numbers. And over the morale was relatively low within the healthcare service leading into this. And what's been really positive and really nice is seeing that the general population, the person on the street, the gratitude and the appreciation they've had has really uplifted a lot of people who are feeling quite low with their jobs in general. And I hope that kind of carries forward and just sort of tells the politicians that, you know, not to take us for granted, and we are worth investing in, because when there's nothing more important than our loved one's health, and we have such a great service in this country where we have free at the point of access healthcare for everyone. We don't ask for a bill, whether you're having hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of treatment, because we are investing in people and their health and the loved ones. And when something like this comes along, you realise what's important, and I just hope that kind of maybe reverses a little bit of the political will over the past decade by the Conservative government to undermine the healthcare system a little bit. So hopefully moving forward, it'll be a bit more positive.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's really powerful stuff from everyone there, and I can echo my sentiment there, that I hope that what this has shown is just how amazing the NHS is, and I've seen it out on the streets, and you know, people sending their support, and yeah, I hope it hits the right people in the right places, and
yeah.
you know, we never have to be in a situation like this again, where we're talking about underfunding to such a scale that we've unfortunately had to, and hopefully from the likes of us, a little bit of joy that we could bring, and a little bit of money. There's us, and there's tons of other people that have been raising money for the NHS, and hopefully it does go to help. And obviously we feel really happy to be able to do that. So again, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming along and giving your time. It's been massively powerful session, this, and it's been a real eye-opener, and the things that I take from it is that as moving forward in the world, everyone needs to come together, needs to work together in all aspects, because we've proved just in this chat that everything's connected. There's nothing that doesn't, you know, it's like the human body, everything works in tandem if it's working properly. So I think we can all take from that to be kind to each other. Our message is be more kind, and I think that's been mentioned 2 or 3 times today. So thank you all again, and we will see you next week. We're going to be touching on small venues, and we're delving in a little bit more into the arts and maybe theatre as well, and to try and work out how we can really save our arts scene and kickstart it again after this. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.